Neuroplasticity is becoming very present when we work with psychedelics, even at this tiny macro level. And neuroplasticity is what makes us more open, adaptive, receptive to making changes. It becomes a lot more accessible and more desirable for us to feel inspired or feel more creative, to want to look at the things that we really might not want to look at, but we know that we have to look at. It becomes a lot more open for us to take, kind of pull the curtain back, start to look at those things. And that's where we start to really experience the transformation, is by going into it and healing it and changing perspectives around it.
Hello, welcome back to the Sovereign Self Show. Before we get into the actual episode, this is me recording one day before we go live because this is my testimonial. I have been using these functional medicine, the mushroom from Golden Rule Mushroom Company. We have the two ladies from this company in today's episode for a few months now. And you'll hear in the episode, I was kind of getting all these synchronicities. We've had people come on talking about microdosing before, and I really felt called to try this tool, called to implement this microdosing into my life. And before, I had reservations. As a sensitive soul, I wasn't sure about dosage. How much do I really take? What strand? Ethical? Are they organic? Is there any filler? All that kind of stuff. And I felt so aligned with the guidelines and the protocols and the product and the people behind this company. I knew this was for me. So what I like about Golden Rule is that they use 100% of the flowering body. They don't use any fillers, organic mushrooms. They are really about education, so much so that they have a free quiz for you to actually find out what is your optimal microdosing journey look like, what strands look like the best for you, what dosage, what's the protocol, when to take them. That reassured me so much that I was like, this is it. So a little bit of my testimonial, since you guys probably know, we have been traveling since August last year, and it has been such a beautiful and challenging experience for me. Old things of fear, anxiety, programs of codependency that I thought were healed a long time ago have been coming up, because when you change your environment and open up that root of groundedness and security, even though we move every, a minimum every month or so, a few months, it's a lot to bring up stuff. And so I just felt like there were points where I was doing all the things that have helped me before, yet I was feeling these waves of anxiety. I was feeling these waves of the energy of codependency, trying to control the situation, trying to control other people, feeling out of control. And it really felt like it was just like re-traumatizing me. It really felt like in those moments I was stuck. And so using the protocols that we talk about here, breath work, mindfulness, somatic movement, energy healing, in addition, these microdosing mushrooms have really helped me be able to feel what's coming up in a safe way, in an introspective way, and not feel those triggers at such a big capacity where it just keeps me in that trauma loop. You guys probably understand what I'm talking about. So I took the quiz, and what I decided to go with was the Golden Teacher strand here. And they have so many different strands, blends, not just with microdosing mushrooms, but other functional mushrooms like reishi, lion's mane, all of those beautiful mushrooms to help balance out your body. And it has really done such a beautiful job with helping calibrate my nervous system and that root chakra. I've not felt this great and just even keeled in a very long time from traveling. So my heart goes out to Golden Rule Mushroom Company, and I want to give back to you guys. You guys have grown with me the past 6 years, and the Golden Rule Company is going to be sponsoring. I partnered with them, the Sovereign Self Show. So if you guys want to try these out, these amazing tools, this amazing medicine, head over to their website and use code Loren10, that's LOREN10, to get 10% off your first purchase. And make sure you take that quiz so you have the information, so you have the protocol, so you have the education to make you feel safe, to make sure that you can really feel empowered in your own sovereignty in this journey, because this is why we named that show Sovereign Self Show. Sometimes we feel like a victim to our body. Sometimes we feel like weak and fearful because of the circumstances around us. But the truth is we're always sovereign. The truth is that we are always in that stream of well-being. That is the natural state of being, well-being. And tools like this functional medicine, like these mushrooms, help us remind us of who we already are, who we truly are. A beautiful remembering. I hope you guys enjoy this beautiful show with Tiffany and Rachel. I cannot wait to hear what you guys think. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sovereign Self Show, where you learn your body and emotions are not in the way. They are leading the way. And today we are deep diving into all things mushrooms with Rachel Pastor and Tiffany Hurd. They are representatives from Golden Rule Mushrooms and are redefining wellness with science-backed microdosing and holistic practices, combining their expertise in neuroscience, leadership, and mindset transformation. They have helped thousands heal from anxiety, PTSD, and trauma while fostering clarity, creativity, and growth. And I'm sure we will really deep dive into the spiritual aspects and the mycelial network itself. And before we jump in, I just normally if I know it's a good podcast, usually I have tech issues. No tech issues here, but I was literally on their website this morning without even realizing that they were coming on today. So I was like, wow, okay, well, apparently the mycelial network is connected us before we even have gotten on recording in the 3D. So welcome, Rachel and Tiffany.
Thank you. We're happy to be here. And I just love that you shared that, because the minute you shared that, I'm like, oh my God, I feel we're meant to be here. We're always meant to be where we are, but it just felt so good.
Such good confirmation. Yeah, we're really excited to be here.
Okay, well, I know Cliff Notes version because I love reading the bios, but one of the reasons why I started my podcast was because my own healing journey and feeling inspired by everybody else's growth and empowerment. What got you guys into doing the work that you do today? Like, how did the mushrooms call you? Because we're always on the path, right? It's this beautiful cycle, but I love to hear all of those little connection points that got you here today.
Yeah. Well, I would say it's been a long journey. It's been calling for a long time. Back when I was 15 to 20, I really struggled with a heroin addiction. I was homeless, and I'd lost all my friends, all my family, again, living on the streets. And around 20 years old, I was almost 21. My boyfriend, that I'd been a heroin addict all that time, he really was the last person I had left in my life. He passed away from an overdose. And it really was like a death or change moment for me. And I had tried to change a lot before that. I had been to rehabs and methadone clinics. I've been in and out of methadone clinics, but it just really, that really was my rock bottom. And I'm not sure. I know the process that took place after that. I ended up moving to Hawaii. I sold just enough stuff to get a one-way ticket to Hawaii, and I had a bedroom waiting there for me from a person who had been in the addiction with me earlier on, and they had moved there and gotten clean. But I always say I really flew there on angel's wings, because what took place for me after that really, it really has shown me that I've always been guided. I've always been protected. I've always been taken care of. But interestingly enough, when I decided before I took that trip, I was in such a broken place. I literally got down on my knees and I was praying to a God that I didn't even know if I believed in. But I was like, save me. Otherwise, I don't want to be here. I'm done. And I was saved. That's why I say I flew like on angel's wings into this transformation. And it was a it's so interesting when you say, like, you talk about transformation and people talk about transformation and transforming their lives. And yes, so much beauty comes from that, but it's often darker before the light in transformation. And it was such a dark time for me, because when I started to wake up from using the drugs that I had literally covered my feelings with and lived in with for so many years, when I started to wake up, I realized like all the people that I hurt, and all that the life that I had chosen to live, and all the things that had taken place over all those years, and all the trauma that had taken place even before I became an addict. And the reason I actually became an addict is I had massive anxiety and depression, and I just wanted to feel better. That's it. I just wanted to feel better. And come now I'm off the drugs, it all comes rushing back in, right? And that really leads me to this medicine journey, because I was able to overcome the physical addiction. So when I stepped off the plane in Hawaii, I never used again. I never used again. I was able to overcome the heroin addiction. So the physical addiction left me, and I did change my life in so many ways. But there was still the mental and emotional and the spiritual and the trauma, and all of that I was still carrying with me. And it wasn't until many years later, uh, I I I've always been an entrepreneur ever since I got clean. Like, I have started different businesses and created different things, but I started this really big fitness festival. It at the time was Colorado's largest fitness festival, and people would come in for this, and we'd have hundreds of vendors, and it was amazing. And that first year of running it, I had my team, and I was all my pain, all my shame, everything that I had been holding on to and walking with and holding in my body, it came roaring in like none other as I was really leading this team. And it was just mirror after mirror after mirror. And at the end, going into the next year, I asked my whole team, all right, you guys, that was incredible. Are you guys ready to go for another year? Every single one of them said no. And they all left. They didn't want to work with me anymore. They wanted nothing to do with me. I really was everything that I had been holding in over all those years. Like, they were feeling all of that from me, all of my fear, everything. Like, I just was acting out. And that's when I was like, uh, it's time for a change. It's time for a change. And I really went on a journey to work on myself and go within. And that's when the medicine presented itself. And I started microdosing, and then I went on a big ayahuasca retreat. And in that ayahuasca retreat is really where this journey begun with me working with Golden Rule. Is I was really showing that I was meant to bridge the gap. So bridging the gap and helping people feel safe to come to the other side of, and there's not a really another side, but like helping them feel safe to practice the medicine. Because I feel like in a lot of ways it's, there's been so much put around it over the years, and I don't feel this way. It's just it's what it is that it's been maybe demonized in some way, that it's bad or it's wrong or it's drugs, and people don't feel okay to take it when it's really for anybody and everybody. It's been used for eons and eons, long before we were even here. And how do you help the other? I'm a 40-something-year-old soccer mom living in the suburbs. How do I help the other soccer mom feel okay to to embody this beautiful medicine? And so that's really, how the medicine came into my life. And it really has been a massive impact of the whole beginning story that I told you, of really helping me. Yes, I physically overcame the addiction to heroin, but the medicine and the inner work that I've done, and my connection that has deepened with God and spirit, really has helped me in the mental, emotional, and spiritual in alignment, and helping me really find freedom. And that's what I was always looking for since the very beginning. I was looking for this freedom. And I've been able to connect into it and really embody that now.
And Tiffany, I mean, tough act to follow, but our journeys are beautifully unique. How about you? How did the medicine call you into this work?
Yeah, it's always a tough act to follow after Rachel's incredible story, but yeah, I just love Rachel so much. Such an incredible human, such an incredible story. And every time she shares it, it's always received in a new way. And there's always bits and pieces that I haven't heard that I learn about her that I always love. So thanks for sharing your story, Rachel. Yeah. So the medicine found me somewhere along my journey 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago. And I have a corporate background, not anymore, of course, but I was in the corporate world, climbed the ladder to executive director roles and sales and strategy and go, 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 go for about 15 years. And my background before that was a Division I college athlete. I played basketball. And so I slid right into the competitive career, and it was a really good fit for me. And that pace was really familiar to me to just basically take my type A personality and be nonstop 24/7 until it caught up with me. And so did all the childhood trauma and very unstable upbringing. And all of that just kind of blended in together and presented itself as high stress levels, anxiety, symptoms of depression, feeling unfulfilled in a career that I was successful in, and that just eating at you when you're not feeling like your work is purposeful and fulfilling. And I remember sitting one day in a sales meeting, and I was like, wow, I am living someone else's vision right now. Everything that I'm contributing to in this company is someone else's vision that I'm just not aligned with anymore. And so you take all of that. I started to dive into personal development work, therapy, just more spirituality. That was really incredible at the time and really valuable and really beneficial. At that time as well, I also ended up getting on medications, Lexapro and Adderall, and I was on both of those because of those symptoms and the things that I just hadn't resolved, all of it, for about 7 years, 6 years, excuse me. And then, like I said, went into the personal development, the therapy, tried to kind of unpack a lot of these things. It worked, but it wasn't deep enough for what I needed. And started to hear about psychedelics. And I was like, okay, plant medicine, psychedelic, this feels really true for me. This was, again, 8 years ago. If we went and looked up microdosing 8 years ago, you're not going to really find much. Definitely not to the degree of what's mainstream today. So I just felt this calling, and I think through the personal development and the spirituality work that I started doing, it started to unlock what it felt like for me to start to in tune and understand what it was like to hear my own intuition. And that was not familiar to me for many, many, many of those years. And so I started to hear that call and I started to feel the pulse. And I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. So all that to say, I did a lot of research and education, ended up putting myself on a microdosing protocol with mushrooms, and paired that with lifestyle habits and just really put together this whole individualized program for myself of like, okay, I'm going to microdose on these days. I'm going to implement these modalities to regulate my nervous system, and I'm going to get off this medication. Like, that's what I'm doing. And so I did. And within 3 months, I did. And I didn't have any side effects, I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms. And even beyond that, I was feeling the most alive, grounded, in touch with my emotions that I have ever felt in my life. And really, that was because all of a sudden, the medications that suppressed so much of my authenticity and my truth and my aliveness was just like a weight of just shit. And so now that's getting removed. Been working with this beautiful medicine that's like bringing all the things up. And so I'm processing those things, I'm releasing those things, like all of it's happening. And then I was like, okay, I got to look at my career. Like, that's the big thing. I got to look at this. So I started making changes. One thing led to another where I started to enter the psychedelic world, started teaching people about microdosing, how to microdose, how to implement these modalities, how to work with the medicine. Did that, and then brought in my business background, blended all the worlds together. And here we are now, 8 years later, and it's been incredible.
Wow. I love it. Thank you both for sharing your stories. I think as like sensitive souls, sometimes I feel, I know I did, and I still do at times, that is like a weakness, right? Whether it is the anxiety or other medications, whether it's a prescription drug or, you know, something like Rachel's story, heroin, we're searching for these things outside of ourselves to help us to feel normal, to feel in our body. And I would love to hear, you know, your perspective. I know plant medicine and microdosing is way different. It's not something as so much as taking outside of yourself, because it helps you connect to who you really are. So I guess your own experience, you know, what you've seen through people taking it, other sensitive, beautiful souls, these light workers on this path, like the differences. And also, like, think of the mycelial network. It's the connectivity aspect of it all, too, which is way different than any other different substances out there.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that the biggest thing is that, you know, talking about either whether it be heroin or even an SSRI or Adderall, there's so many different things. Alcohol, food. I mean, there's so many different things out there that we use to essentially numb our feelings. And that would be the biggest difference, and something that people will notice right away if they're used to numbing. Sometimes using the mushroom medicine can be a little uncomfortable, and the reason is because it's bringing things to the surface. It's allowing you to feel. But the beauty in that is exactly what we need. We need to allow it to flow, to move, not restrict, right? And when you are allowing those things to come to the surface, when you're allowing things to come into your awareness and be aware of them and feel your emotions, you're actually working through things so that then you can release them. And so you're not staying stuck. And that is the beautiful part. And that is where we see so much change in people when they're using the mushroom medicine, because now all of this stuck energy is flowing. They're feeling their emotions. They're seeing things in new perspectives, and they're shifting and they're changing. And so that would be the biggest difference that I noticed.
I love everything that Rachel shared. It's almost like building from what she shared, it's almost like with all of that newness and aliveness and awakenedness, it's like, who is that person then? And I think that's something where we see this medicine being so incredibly powerful and healing and valuable, yes, in receiving everything that Rachel just shared, but also through the integration period as you're literally integrating these new ways of being and thinking and creating these new healthier ways of living and being in relationship and how you treat yourself and the love that you pour into the things that matter in your life. Is it's not just during the experience and what it brings up and the things that you release and heal, but it's also who you become and who you choose to reinstall through the process, even after working with this medicine. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add to that. That felt really present.
Yeah. And I think hearing what you guys both said, I would love to hear you, maybe your own personal experiences too, about whether it's microdosing or more of a psychedelic experience, that connection to God. You know, Rachel, you beautifully shared like your turning point of like the lowest point, praying to God that you weren't even sure that existed. How this medicine at a macro or micro level can really help us bridge that gap and that connection. Because I find like whether it's past life or ancestral, doesn't really matter. We're sensitive, but we're scared of connecting to that level for whatever reason.
So many different ways to go with this. I would say starting with the sole fact that if we stay on the topic of mushrooms, right? When we microdose, we can microdose with mushrooms or LSD, but we'll stay in the mycelium network for now. It's an earth-based medicine. It's grown from the earth. And that already brings in this component of spirituality, of connecting to the divine, connecting to the earth. And a lot of people, of course, reference that as God, amongst many other ways of viewing that perspective. And then we add in the component of the indigenous aspects of where this medicine was its origin and where on the earth it was grown. Thousands of years ago, I mean, Rachel said eons and eons, thousands and thousands, where our lineages have been working with these medicines. And yes, it feels very mainstream today, but this is nothing new. In fact, our ancestors would use this medicine to hunt and find food because it opened up their visual perception to be able to see more clearly in the nighttime. They would host ceremonies for healing, birth. I mean, it goes back and back and back. And so I love when we bring in this medicine intelligence into the room because of course, like most things, when we go so mainstream, this part tends to like leave the conversation, but it's one of the most important parts of the conversation.
I would say for me, it's just been a very personal experience in like you mentioned, I at one point was praying to a God that I didn't even know that I believed in. I, I grew up going to Christian schools, grew up going to Catholic church and then to Christian churches, very much in the church. And it was more of a learning. I never really felt God, but I was learning about God. And that's why when, I got to that point in my life of getting on my knees, I truly, at that point, didn't really feel like I had ever felt God. I just felt like it's something that people kept telling me about, but I didn't have a connection or a relationship with God. And, over the years, even before doing plant medicine, I think that I started to find God in different ways, in different parts of my life. But it was specifically a journey that I did early on that tapped me into ultimately, I went from where I was all the way to in my mother's stomach to before I was born in that journey. And I went through that whole path. And I remember before even coming here. And in that time, what I was told through that, everything that I had experienced to get to that point was that I was whole and worthy, and I always was, and that never, ever left me. And, it wasn't just being told, I felt it in every part of my being. And it was a deep connection to, it was so spiritual, and I felt so connected to God and to spirit and all of the guides that have been with me all of the way I could see them so clearly. And it was like finally this moment of deep connection and knowing and relationship with God. And since then, my relationship has just continued to grow and grow and grow. It's undeniable. But that really has been my journey with it in, also how plant medicine has connected me to it.
Thank you guys for sharing. Yeah. I find, we're searching for that aspect. Maybe we realize it or not. And sometimes those moments find us. Sometimes we can cultivate that. But that divine spark, whether it's just a little bit or having a profound experience, you don't forget that. Like that wisdom becomes you, right? That remembrance is just a part of who you are. And I think the same goes to healing using microdosing or plant medicine to the extent of like it changes who you are. It's not like you're taking a anti-anxiety pill and once you get off of it, that's just masking the symptoms. So I would love to hear, from a transformational point of view. I know a lot of listeners here can relate to the emotional side, the depression, the anxiety, the even type A. It's like, we find ourselves like so driven, yet so sensitive and pulled back, kind of Tiffany, similar to your story of like, what am I doing? I'm living somebody else's dream. And then all the emotions with that coming up.
Yeah. So the question is more so like, what's the transformation that comes through that experience?
Yeah. Just the transformation aspect. We touched on like if the emotions of we suppress them, it helps us release them. But from like the healing perspective, everybody's different. How that transformation you can approach whoever you feel called from energetic level, from a more, neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
scientific model, whatever, however you feel called.
Yeah. No, thanks for clearing that up. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Yeah. So it's almost like, okay, we're talking about all these incredible benefits and possibilities, but it's like, how is this actual, like, how is this actually happening to us in the bodies? And so taking like the neurobiological point of view, um, neuroplasticity, like you touched on. So neuroplasticity is becoming very present when we work with psychedelics, even at this tiny macro level. And so the active component in mushrooms is psilocin. We take that, it gets digested in the gut, goes up to the brain axis, and the gut to brain axis is completely getting harmonized. And what that's doing is it's flooding our minds with neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is what makes us more open, adaptive, receptive to making changes. It becomes a lot more accessible and more desirable for us to feel inspired or feel more creative, to want to look at the things that we really might not want to look at, but we know that we have to look at. It becomes a lot more accessible and open for us to take, kind of pull the curtain back, start to look at those things, and that's where we start to really experience the transformation, is by going into it and healing it and changing perspectives around it. But even beyond that is our brains are creating new neural pathways, and also our existing neural pathways are being cleared. So to break that down, the left and the right hemisphere, regions of the brain that typically are not activated on the daily 24/7, communicating with each other. So usually one part is present and the other is very subconscious, as an example. And that's hard to process certain things that are like more at a root deep level. And so all of a sudden, when these hemispheres are communicating with one another, things are more signaled and more present, and you're accessing things that you're typically not. And so that's incredibly effective. And then I would say that also, so it's creating new pathways, but even our existing pathways. So if we're stuck in a certain pattern and there's like a repetitive thought that's kind of circulating within that experience, think of that as like one pathway in the brain that is just on a hamster wheel over and over and replaying. Why does this thing keep showing? Why am I continuing to go in these types of relationships with these types of people, as an example? All of a sudden, because the pathways are being cleared in your mind and new ones are being created, that thought has other options to go into, which is where people are like, oh, wow, I'm now seeing this completely different. Or I didn't know that was there, or I didn't know this was an option. That alone is life-changing for so many circumstances. When we start to talk about anxiety and depression and you're stuck on that thought loop pattern, that is literally life-changing for people to have a different reaction, a different response, and a different body somatic feeling. The last piece I will say is the default mode network. We all have a default response. It could be associated as well with like the amygdala part of the brain. These parts are our fear response, the active, loud, I want to go do something that feels really inspiring, but I'm nervous, and the fear response comes in. It's like, nope, there's a limiting belief attached to that as to why you're not doing that, why you're not worthy. Don't do that. That's not yours. So that loud part gets quiet. And when we get quiet, we can get present. We can slow down. Going back to the type A, go, 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 go. When that type A person, I'll raise my hand, slows down, gets present, hears her own voice, understands her own intuition, can actually understand, what am I feeling? What is the emotion? Where is this coming from? Then you can choose something very differently. So that is how the transformation is possible with this medicine.
Oh, before Rachel, before you dive in, I kept thinking about Abraham Hicks talks about laying new pipes. And that's the visual I kept getting while you were saying that. I'm like, oh, okay. So here, if you guys want assistance laying those new pipes, stop focusing on the old ones, start focusing on those new choices as you feel what's coming up. And this really helps create a neural path highway, to super highway is how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good
I think
stuff.
as you're removing all those limiting beliefs and really laying that new pipe work, I always like to say, I don't believe it changes us. I
Mhm.
believe it is just a sweet remembrance of who we really are. So, you know, I think that, you know, for a long time I always thought I was changing, like I was just becoming something else. But then I just remembered that I'm just becoming who I'm going back to who I came here as, you know, before all those limiting beliefs, before all the fears were set into place, before any of that.
Yes.
Um, so yeah.
I think it's think of it like working with these medicines is a tool for us to have the opportunity to plug back in and get more connected and remember who the F we are,
Yes.
right? It's like it's a tool to allow you to access that part of you. Could you do it in other ways? Of course. But this is a very beautiful option and way to go more deeply into yourself.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, the mushrooms themselves, they are all connected through the mycelial network.
Mhm.
I think that word connected, but also the remembrance really shines through. It's not something we have to fix, something we have to heal. Thank you, Rach, for pointing that out because that's such a huge shift in the healing journey, quote unquote, because it's like, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's not, like, I'm already whole. Like, I'm
Mhm.
already enough. So, huge paradigm shift. Um, I'd love to hear, it is getting more popular. It is getting more mainstream, like you guys said. What the company you work with, uh, is it golden? Yes, golden rule mushrooms. I almost said golden ratio. Different.
And Rachel works too.
um, what sets you guys apart, from the other mushroom, microdosing, wellness, psychedelic industries? And, I know the company is really focusing on fostering impact, but that longevity aspect as well.
I would say, you know, so for when Golden Rule was first created over 2 years ago, a lot of what was seen at that time was, and truly why Golden Rule was created, was that a lot of the companies that were out there felt very, in a lot of ways, kind of trippy or weird in some way. I mean, ultimately, I get why it looks like that because I've done deep journeys and it can have its own, you know, flavor. But for somebody that, um, you know, really hasn't connected with that yet, that feels very strange. And it doesn't feel very welcoming. And so we really have set out to create everything to be welcoming for anybody and everybody. And that goes from how the products are made and what dosages they're made in to the amount of education that we offer. So the education is a huge piece of it. And actually, Tiffany is the leader in that area. And so, you know, we run 30-day microdosing experiences where we truly hold people by the hand and walk them through their first 30 days, which are really important. We also have self-guided programs that they can take them through that have like 51 short videos that just take you through every question you could possibly ever have. To our customer service, I will say, I know that sounds silly, but it's that being one of the things, but truly in our industry, we're at another level. And in that, one, we're extremely responsive, but also we are there to help you. So we have people emailing us all the time asking questions around medications or things that they're concerned about or, you know, dosage levels, all of that. And we take on every single email and, you know, really our heart is all the way in it to help that person. Um, you know, at the surface level, we're a products company, but we are so, so much more than that. And you know, I don't even see us as a products company actually, but in that we really have sought out to make an impact in people's lives in that we're not just selling a product. We're really helping educate people and really helping them learn how to use the medicine so that they can have the most incredible experience possible. And at the same time, making everybody feel welcome, every single person, you know? So, and then, I think there's a lot of companies that have really great quality products out there. We're right, we're there, we're top of the line. So we really take pride, and that's why it's called Golden Rule. Um, we wanted to serve other people the same that we would want ourselves. So I wouldn't want to take anything less than the highest quality product. And so that's what we serve.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that, I guess. The piece that I would add is our product line is phenomenal. And I don't just say that because I'm working in Golden Rule and I'm biased, but I've been in the space for over, 9 years at this point, and this has been the best microdosing medicine that I personally have ever taken and provided to our clients. And I say that with so much love and honor and integrity because it really builds off of what Rachel shared of the options of products that we have and the reason why we designed those options in the ways that we did to meet many different individuals and their needs and their desires and their goals, and not just the variety of mushroom strains and blends that we have to customize that to specific experiences and outcomes, therapeutic speaking, and also creativity and peak performance speaking as well, but the different medicines. Right. So the microdosing psilocybin and the LSD, very rare that you're seeing other companies offer both of those medicines in a way that's high integrity quality. And then also, we haven't really touched on this, but we offer a macrodosing line as well. And that's very low dose of a macrodose, but it's enough to have an at-home experience if you desire. And we have packages and kits to really customize to make sure everybody's really supported within that as well. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think that that's a huge differentiator of us with a lot of other companies that are doing great work as well.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Tiffany, because it is so true. Like we do have it, I don't want to say pro and con, but we do have a large amount of product, and in that we have a lot of varieties. So I say pro and con to that is that if you're brand new, it can be a little overwhelming coming to our website because we have so many different strains and blends and edibles, and like it's a lot. But we have taken the step to, because we do know that, to pointing out certain products that would be great for beginners. So we have like a beginner's kit. And we also have different strains that we point out specifically, these are better for beginners. Just to help people as they're first starting off their journey, because going to a website like ours maybe could feel a little overwhelming at first for somebody first beginning because yeah, hey, good thing we have so many different things for you to choose from. Also, when you're first starting, this is where you start. So,
And we have an amazing quiz too, right? So if you go to the website, the quiz is going to pop up, and that's an amazing first step to begin. That's going to provide you the clarity of like, okay, what product might be best for me? But even beyond that is, Rachel touched on this already, but, we host our monthly calls, and it's us who are hosting those. And we're educating, answering questions, and also speaking into the product to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what would be best for you and the protocols and everything along those lines. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know. You guys do have a wide range of product, which I love. I actually took the quiz this morning. But yes, I love seeing that, and the support, the education, but also like the self-led journeys. Like I saw a lot of the programs and the journals, and to be able to help assist you along that to process and to remember, like we said, to remember. So I would love to talk to you guys for hours, but I think we can close it down here. Was there anything else on either of your hearts that you wanted to share just to kind of underline what we talked about today?
no, I thought it went beautifully, and I really feel like everything was shared that was meant to.
Yeah.
I always want to hear more about, the host.
Yeah. Rachel always wants to switch it up and
I
interview.
do. I want to be the host because I want to hear more about you.
I'm curious
But
what products you got with your quiz.
Yeah, I'll have to look. There's a tab open
yeah,
somewhere. I'll tell you. I don't.
after the podcast, we'll get into that. But thank you so much for having us. We're so
Yeah.
grateful. People can go to goldenrulemushrooms.com for the website. They're also welcome to email us at hello@goldenrulemushrooms. And they can find us on Instagram at Golden Rule Mushrooms or Golden Rule Microdose. We have 2 different Instagram accounts. And they can find me, Rachel.pastor, on Instagram, and Tiffany at I am Tiffany Hurd.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we welcome everyone, and all.
Mm,
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you so much for having us. Really grateful, really beautiful conversation. And if you're listening to this, I'm a true believer that the medicine has found you. Listen to the call. And if you have any questions, like Rachel said, we're happy to support in any possible way. But thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thank you guys for coming on and sharing your experience, your heart, your wisdom. The network definitely brought us together in many ways. If you guys feel called, if you thought of somebody, I highly recommend the listeners share this with that loved one, because you never know what podcast, what little video or link that can help inspire somebody to their own story. That's why I started this show. If you haven't, please subscribe and like, whether it's on any podcast platforms or on YouTube. We are here every week, either myself or beautiful guests like Tiffany and Rachel, to really spread that message of remembrance. It's all leading the way back to who you already are. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I wanted to remind you guys that this show is sponsored by Golden Rule Mushroom Company. And by using code Loren10, that's LOREN10, you can get 10% off and start exploring how these functional microdosing mushrooms could support your health, mind, body, and soul. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.